Hey everybody, I just wanted to do a quick wrap-up video on the tree canopy. Essentially, in the last video I talked about putting the flock down, gluing it multiple times, with watered down PVA. I showed a bit on putting the edges on, talked about how I changed sort of mid-plan and no longer use that scrubbing pad, but just in making the foliage itself, pressing down so tightly with the glue and getting enough glue in there that I just put the foliage directly on. The last thing that I've done, and it is already finished, is I did a bit of airbrushing just to show some variation in the canopy top. Now with a lot of things that I've done on this tree canopy, you can do it differently. I mean, you can make foliage and make your own trees look different. Like you could have a clump of, more orange trees here and brown and yellow, and you could do lots of stuff. Like you don't have to do it all green. You don't have to use an airbrush. When I did the airbrushing, essentially I used a craft paint initially for my green, and it was just sort of, oh gosh, I think it was called, not lilac, hemlock or something like that is what it was called, but it was just a light green craft paint. And then what I did was I just took Citadel Caliban green. Now, this isn't typically an airbrush paint. Citadel isn't usually the paint that I first go to for airbrushing, but I happen to just like the color for this. And so I did 2:1 mixed with water in my airbrush, and I just sprayed sort of in between where the trees are to try to darken it. If you can see, it's a bit darker there, just shadow, to create some shadow in between the trees. And then what I did after that, and it took very little, but I did the same thing, and I used the layer paint. This is scratched or painted over here. It's moot green, and 2:1, fairly diluted, and I needed even less of that. But I just kind of went onto the top of the canopy just to try to show some of the sunlight reflecting onto it. Admittedly, I made this canopy fairly basic for gaming purposes. I could have done a lot more underneath, putting in rocks and branches, and I've done that in the past, and bushes, and I may still throw some bushes in there at one point. But the one thing the advantage of having it this way is the minis aren't obstructed when they go in there. But essentially, and actually as you can see here, one of the reasons I have to rework this a bit, because I found this pad here, and why I switched away from doing that is it didn't accept the glue nearly as well with the foliage, and so I'm either going to pull that off or just reapply some foliage with the hot glue gun. But essentially it's finished, and yeah, like I've shown this already before, but the advantage to the tree canopy is that you can have your minis in here when you're playing on the board. For visual purposes, you can put the canopy on there. It just looks really good. You don't have to worry about knocking trees over and things like that. And it does still shed a little bit of flock, and I suspect that at one point I will have to reapply a little bit, and maybe even re-airbrush if I ever reapply down the road. But that really, to some degree for me, is even the case with manufactured trees and things like that too. Just don't skimp out on the white glue. But yeah, that's really just a quick wrap up. I hope you guys like this idea of doing a tree canopy for your wargaming terrain. One thing that was pointed out to me is that Artisans of War, who I have quoted in the beginning of the series as giving me inspiration for the initial plan for this, are no longer in business. That's actually very unfortunate. I believe that their tutorial page that they had on there is also then now no longer available. But yeah, but hopefully this idea still sort of lives on. I know there are people that have done this, and you can also do it with different scales. It actually was created initially to be done by them, I believe, in 8mm, I think, or 10mm scale. Literally just using nails as tree trunks. So, okay, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this series. Take care.